Hey, welcome. I'm Bronson Johnson, Head of Infrastructure and Sustainability at California Forever. I'm excited to host our third episode in a series of conversations with the leaders that we're working closely with on the East Solano Plan. We'll discuss what we're hoping to achieve with the project and explore how we can collectively ignite positive change across all of California. Today, I'm joined by the esteemed Uri Eliahu, who is the president and CEO of NGO, which is an environmental and engineering consulting firm. They have offices concentrated in California, plus strategic locations around the globe. Our team tapped NGO last year for their wealth of knowledge and deep-rooted connection in this region. Uri is a registered geotechnical engineer and civil engineer in California with many decades of experience working on a wide range of projects. He is also a founding director and president of the California Association of Geologic Hazard Abatement Districts, otherwise known as GADs. I encourage those listening live to please share any questions throughout the conversation in the comment thread, and we'll address them later on in the conversation. Uri, thank you for joining today. I've been looking forward to this chat.
Thanks, Bronson. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So first, let's talk about your background. What is your family's California origin story?
Well, my family immigrated to Berkeley, California when I was 8 years old, just turned 8. The reason was so my dad could pursue graduate studies at the University of Berkeley. We had a very meager survival during those years.
Yeah, what was California like back then?
Oh, it was the envy of the world, really. Even though things were very tight for us and challenging, we had to deal with tremendous adversity, it still felt free, like the land of opportunity. My parents always instilled the importance of education in us. And it was really all about education if we were to have any hope of upward mobility. That was a really big deal. We came to California for the quality of the education. Each of my parents was the youngest of 9 siblings and had therefore learned to fend for themselves. And education was their ticket to a better life. They also believed in democracy. My dad grew up in a place where he wasn't granted common freedoms, no one was, that we sometimes take for granted. So the love of democracy also translated to how our family operated, particularly after my mom passed.
Incredible. And now that you have kids on your own, how do you think California has changed?
Well, there's less margin for error now. There's more to overcome and more competition for the opportunities that do exist. And for sure, opportunities still exist. It's just more of a pressure cooker now. It makes it more difficult for hardworking, particularly middle-class people to live the California dream and to have upward mobility, to have a house, to raise a family. California just isn't accommodating our growing needs.
Yeah, I hear that. So going back a step then, how did young Uri eventually find his way to NGO?
Well, so back to NGO, my dad completed his graduate work at Berkeley around 1969 and took a job at a consulting firm. That firm fell on hard times, and a senior person within the firm named Bill Wigginton, who was really the founder of NGO, enlisted my dad and another engineer, John Muris, to spin off with the blessing of that firm that was kind of spinning towards its demise, and to form NGO in 1971. Mm-hmm. Then 15 years later, those 3 founders of NGO started thinking about their retirement and about transitioning the company to the next generation. In the meantime, I had completed my studies at Berkeley, and I went to work for a very large multinational company where I learned a ton, and particularly a lot about implementing very large very, very large scale projects.
Yeah.
So I joined NGO in the late 80s and eventually became president.
Awesome. So for full disclosure to the audience, I spent the early part of my career at NGO. So yes, I'm a huge fanboy. NGO is a consultancy with expertise in mixed-use development, large-scale earthwork, transportation, urban infill, industrial sites, and so much more. It's where I learned about the power of treating your colleagues like teammates, the idea of servant leadership. It's really a true democracy in the workplace where all of the ideas are welcome and anything is possible as long as it's safe and ethical. And I think NGO has been acknowledged year after year as being the best or one of the best workplaces out there. So can you tell us a little more, Uri, about what you're most proud of about NGO and a little more on the kinds of projects that you work on?
Thanks for the kind words, Bronson. And you're always NGO family, you know that. I'm most proud of our brilliant, selfless, enthusiastic team members who love to serve. We're like a small family of about 425 people. And because of their can-do spirit and innovative thinking, we've been very fortunate to work on some of the largest, most complex, highest profile projects of all types. As you mentioned, these include transportation, water, wastewater, industrial, energy, and of course, large-scale master planned communities.
So a lot has changed in California over the past decade and really several decades. How do you see the state of infrastructure in California today?
Look, the American Society of Civil Engineers has given us a score of C-, given California that score for its infrastructure. That infrastructure that we rely on every day, the roads, the bridges, the transit, the water delivery systems, were built during the boom of the middle of the last century. All of those things are past their design life, and were certainly not designed for a population of 40 million people. And renewal and replacement of that infrastructure has been slowed by a lack of discipline, frankly, a lack of funding, lack of prioritization, and tons of regulatory constraints. There's also a high degree of cynicism in the public, causing some of the biggest projects to stall because of difficulties in obtaining approvals and fighting litigation. It just feels like we've lost that can-do attitude.
Sounds like we need some hope. How will things change going forward?
Well, you know me, Bronson, I'm an optimist, and we just need to plan far into the future. We need to not be myopic. Even though the state is now shrinking for the first time in its existence in terms of population, over the next 20 years, California's population is expected to grow another 25%. That's like 10 million people.
Wow.
So this will put additional strain on our infrastructure, and we have to prepare. Also, you know, with the risk of sea level rise, a lot of our existing critical infrastructure will be at risk. So we're still the world's 5th largest economy. Mm-hmm. It's still a beautiful place to be. People want to be here.
Yep.
So we just need to shift our thinking to accommodate growth and make our places resilient and bring back the California dream. This is what we need to sustain the quality of life for which California is famous. So we have to return to the days of bold, courageous action. Past generations had that. They had vision, leadership, foresight, and courage to build infrastructure that would serve many future generations. Think of the Intercontinental Railroad, the interstate highway system, even the Golden Gate Bridge, and all of these amazing undertakings. We could sit here for an hour and talk about all of these bold initiatives that have allowed us to thrive. So,
yeah, completely. My grandfather-in-law saw the Golden Gate Bridge built. He was born and raised in San Francisco and literally saw the towers, cables go up. And my daughter, Ruby, every day tells me, Dad, that's the most famous bridge on earth. So that's what California is known for. So I hear you on, needing to get some of that boldness back, which is a great segue to the East Solano Plan and the integral role that NGO is playing on the project. Do you remember your initial reaction when first hearing about it?
Yeah, I expected it to be big. I didn't know where it was at that time. And we're fortunate to have worked on some of the biggest projects in the land, really. But this one stood out more for its boldness and its vision than its scale. The scale is astounding, but the boldness and the vision were really what got me. It immediately made so much sense. This land that we're talking about has been here right under our noses, and it seems so obvious. And we need this kind of thinking to overcome our problems, which are very soluble problems. We need to try something different than the failed models that have created our problems.
Yeah. So to do that, to find those solutions, NGO's role encompasses important functions like environmental and geotechnical engineering, stormwater management, and managing all of the geographic information published and from internal studies from our other consultants. How is this project different from anything you've worked on before? What makes this site uniquely suited for a new city?
This is an amazing site. It's an exceptional location for what's being contemplated from a geologic and resilience perspective. As you know, California has a ton of geohazards: earthquake faults, landslides, liquefaction, compressible soils, etc. And we work on many sites where all of those hazards exist on one parcel. The amazing thing is that it's as if this group of individuals that had this dream set out to find the only place where none of those things are issues, and then decided to build a city there. Now, of course, that's not what happened, but really, from a geotechnical engineering standpoint, this might be the most boring big site we've ever worked on. So when we look at the potential even of sea level rise, right? Usually flat sites that are, free of slopes and landslides, sometimes are low lying and susceptible to sea level rise. But again, that's not a problem here. This site is high and dry, above even the conservative sea level rise projections as far out as 2050. Mm-hmm. Those projections, if they occur, will render much of the Bay Area unrecognizable. The site topography is also well suited for managing flooding. And then on top of all that, to complete the trifecta, the site has a low fire hazard risk because it's built far away from wooded areas. Mm-hmm. So the natural advantages of the site couldn't have been engineered any better.
Well, that's great. And to share a little bit of the thing I'm so pumped about here is the opportunity to build a new community at city scale from the ground up. As you know, Uri, I've worked on some of the biggest projects in North America, in multiple states, and especially in California. And there's always a constraint of the infrastructure that you're required to connect to, and it doesn't perform from a sustainability standpoint, and it's susceptible to sea level rise and other hazards. So in this case, building on that stable foundation, we get to start from scratch. I know that sometimes there's a knock on the project to say, how could they build where there's no infrastructure? That's actually the golden key here for us to be able to reach unseen levels of sustainability performance. So the walkability and the density create this perfect form for sustainable living, which is good socially for living too, because it connects people and brings them outdoors. Then we start to, work with the latest infrastructure system technologies. We're not talking smart city. That stuff's so boring. And I wouldn't want to buy a cell phone and have to keep it for 20 years. So why are we going to go make that permanent? But when you talk about energy and water and waste, there are a lot of technologies that are sort of operating in the background that allow us to get to this incredible operational performance. And this isn't experimental. These things are tried and tested. There have been lots of breakthroughs in renewable energy, electrification, thermal systems, waste diversion, water conservation, water reuse. So we can immediately get to that higher performance just by building those individual systems, to the latest technology. But then, so we got our stable foundation, we've got our modern infrastructure. Then we interconnect those systems to create a circular economy, which again, if you're having to go retrofit existing infrastructure to create that circularity, it's way more expensive, and it's never going to function as well as you would have hoped. But in this case, we can interconnect those systems, and maybe you have a waste stream of one system that becomes a resource to the next. It is so powerful. And so we can set even higher performance marks that can help curb carbon emissions and improve resource conservation. I've gone on record as saying this will be the most sustainable city scale community on the planet. And I actually think it's going to be quite easy for us to achieve that for all those reasons I mentioned.
Yeah, dude, that is awesome. And that is exactly right. There's a place for densifying some urban areas, but it is so hard. It's so challenging. Like you say, there are constraints with existing infrastructure. There are hazardous materials issues. There are all sorts of challenges to trying to do that. And sure, it's a laudable goal, but this is a perfect blank canvas to apply everything we've learned and to do it right. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and we're really excited to do that with Solano residents, with county staff, and with the businesses in Solano. It's just such a huge opportunity, really for all of us. So if the Solano community votes to approve this project, obviously there's additional steps that we're going to have. It's not that after the election, if we get a yes, we can go out with our shovels and begin work. There's still environmental impact report, water supply assessment, a whole litany of studies that will need to be completed and more public review process. Once we get through all of that, what do you think the impact will be on Solano County and the surrounding communities? And also, what are you most excited about in that?
Oh, honestly, Solano County can become an internationally recognized leader in sensible development and can provide a template for others to follow. It can overcome any self-doubt and manifest the hope that this project represents. It'll provide an example to the world of how to do it right.
Yeah. Let's help California get its mojo back. So, all right, it's time to take it to the lines here. Let's get into some of the questions that have been streaming in here. Okay, so first one that I see here is what do you mean by bold? Can you elaborate on the projects that you are going to implement? Uri, why don't you handle that one just from a geotech stormwater perspective first?
So in my mind, bold means not doing things incrementally by inheriting a package that has inherent constraints and then trying to build on it or improve it. By going where there aren't these constraints, whether they're geotechnical, whether they're hydrologic, whether they are environmental, where we don't have all those constraints, then we're unlimited in our ability to apply the best science, the best thinking, and really, really look forward. We're not bolting on to some existing edifice that has limitations.
Yeah. There's something about that to me, Uri, where we're also not just trying to make it passable. I think a lot of projects, they don't have the courage to do the right thing. And in this case, the group is really focused on that long view horizon. A lot of the project economics are going to come pretty late in the process. And so it's looking forward past that 100,000 population is really when the project might start to get to positive. But the incredible thing about this group is that they have that patient capital that can achieve that. I think it's something that really makes this stand out. We're not like a traditional developer who's just looking at, okay, well, we can commit to 150 homes next year, and then we'll see how that goes, and then we'll decide. It's really just a constant and consistent ability to keep building again, because we need to get to that 100,000 population really before it will have worked. And then the other part of that is really to look at the total economics of a lot of these infrastructure systems that we're considering for the project. So you're not just thinking about what's the cost to build it, because that's your capital expense bottom line of the money that has to come out of pocket to get the first people in the homes. We're thinking about the operational expenses too, and by improving the performance and sustainability of these systems, we're actually going to be lowering a lot of the operational costs and improving the operational efficiency. And again, that circular economy starts to provide resources that are low cost between systems. So to me, the boldness is really all about the courage and that long view to really see this through and make it the best. All right, we got another question here. From precedent in other cities, what are the environmental wins from having circular economy in communities? How much does it cost in an existing city versus a new one? It really, I think the answer there highly depends on, what specific project, what specific system, what's the specific applicable use. But the example I'll just pick from a hat. I will say, I think that San Francisco has all the right intentions, but just terrible execution. And a great example of that is many of the new developments, particularly on the eastern waterfront, have all been required to put in recycled water distributions, piping in the streets. And they've been doing this by requirement for over 20 years. And the city has not been able to supply the recycled water to fill those pipes and actually make use of it. So that's a negative precedent. I think there are really positive precedents as well. New York just completed a project called Newtown Creek. And it's a large anaerobic digester that is built, co-located with one of the largest wastewater treatment plants probably in the country. It's located in Queens. And so they are recognizing that the biosolids waste product from the wastewater treatment plant actually has use and can be converted to become a renewable biogas fuel, which they then sell to People's Gas, which is a local gas company in New York. So it's seeing, New York is generally known for its bold actions and doing big things. I think California used to be, but there are still, good precedents that are occurring regularly like that, that inspire us in our thinking for East Solano Plan. I've got another one here. How many people are you planning for in this new city? So the total population could reach 400,000. We will do the project in phases. So phase one is, for a development project, still a very large phase. That's 50,000. But at each increment, even the smallest, increment of 5,000 people, we're going to be building out at sort of neighborhood blocks, and we'll be delivering an equal portion. Maybe it's early on even an outsized portion of the non-residential, which makes up a very large portion of this project. So that includes the industry and technology zone. It includes makerspace and manufacturing. It includes commercial office. And so those will be delivered alongside. This is not just a bedroom community. So we also will be delivering park amenities and great schools and other civic amenities and retail. Early on in this project, we know we're going to have to overinvest in those things, because there is a little bit of a leap of faith, I think, for the pioneers of this community. And so I think we'll be, heavier on the front end to really, from the start, make this a great place. But again, with the long view, we operate differently than most developers. In the full build out, in the specific plan, then we can get to a population of 400,000 people. Obviously, that doesn't happen overnight. Obviously, there's a lot of momentum that has to get built early in order to sustain that type of growth rate. And this is, we're talking multiple decades, but there are some really great examples, including San Jose, where if you look at their population growth, it easily eclipsed 100,000 per decade for a few decades running, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we know it has happened locally in the not too distant past, and we believe to get make space for those 10 million people coming in the next 20 years, that this is going to be the best opportunity to just get some agreement with the Solano residents and with all the regulatory agencies, that this can be a place where we can do it, but do it smartly, do it in a way that is really good for the environment and good for the local economy. All right, one more question to wrap it up here. Are you planning to grow food within the city, vertical farms, et cetera? Yeah, we definitely are super interested in vertical farming. The production of a vertical farm is really astounding when you compare it to traditional farming, and it's super water efficient as well. So we, as part of a recent announcement where we've had a number of companies step forward and announce that they wish to build in the new community, one of them is a company called Plenty, and they're really excited to come here. We also have a collaboration with UC Davis. So UC Davis is performing a study right now. Obviously, they're well known as the premier ag institution, academic institution in the country. And they are evaluating and providing some guidelines for us to develop agrivoltaics. So this is combining sheep grazing or some other type of farming with solar photovoltaic generation. So we actually have an RFP out right now on the streets with a number of the major solar developers, many of whom have experience in this realm. And UC Davis is partnered in for us to make sure that we're doing it right, because we do have a first principle on making sure we're sustaining agriculture and preserving the green belt around the new community. So I think that about wraps it up. Thank you all who've tuned in and shared these great questions. And thank you, Uri, for joining us today for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Bronson. And we're very much looking forward to being part of this amazing endeavor. Once again, we have to take bold action and do the right things, not for our sake, but for future generations. One quick story before we close. Yesterday, we had the privilege of sitting through a public meeting. There were, I don't know how many speakers, maybe a couple hundred for all I know. And regardless of which side of the debate, one thing was universal, and that was an appreciation and respect for Travis Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And my takeaway was, imagine trying to permit that today if it didn't exist. And yet it's revered by the entire community. We have to do the right things. We have to be bold about it, and future generations will really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great, Uri. Thanks for joining. We'll see you soon. Bye now.
Take care. Bye.